The story opens on the dying colony ship Persistence, limping through the outer reaches after a catastrophic engine failure. With life support failing and supplies exhausted, the human colonists make a desperate gamble. They jettison their escape pods toward the nearest habitable world, Drakkar Prime, hoping someone will survive. One pod crashes into the volcanic mountains of Ember Peak, home to the ancient Drakkathi, a species of massive, intelligent, dragon-like beings who have watched civilizations rise and fall for millennia. The Drakkathi are isolationists, having withdrawn from galactic affairs after a great war 10,000 years ago left them nearly extinct. Matriarch Scareth, a crimson-scaled elder, discovers the pod and the tiny human infant inside, the only survivor. Against the counsel of her flight, she decides to raise the child, naming her Ember. The Drakkathi are shocked. They haven't raised a hatchling of any kind in centuries, let alone an alien. As Ember grows, she displays unusual resilience. While human, she adapts to Drakkar Prime's harsh gravity, thin atmosphere, and extreme temperatures in ways that fascinate the Drakkathi. She learns to speak their language of rumbles and harmonics, climbs the treacherous peaks, and bonds with Scareth's youngest daughter, Virus, forming an unlikely sisterhood. The part ends with a mysterious signal detected from deep space, a distress call in multiple languages, including Drakkathi. Something is coming, and the galaxy's long peace is about to shatter. Part 2. The Adaptive Predator. 15 years later, Ember has become something unique, a human raised in dragon culture. She's learned their philosophy of the long sight, thinking in centuries, not years, their martial traditions, and their forbidden flame-singing magic. Unlike the massive Drakkathi, Ember uses her smaller size and human flexibility to master techniques they cannot, combining dragon wisdom with human innovation. When a Galactic Concordate survey ship arrives in the system, the crew is stunned to find a human living among the mythical Drakkathi. Commander Thex, a four-armed Quellan officer, tries to convince Ember to return to civilization. She refuses. Drakkar Prime is her home. But Thex brings dire news. The Vorax Swarm, a hive-mind machine intelligence, has begun consuming systems along the galactic rim. Billions are dead. The swarm adapts to every defense, learning and evolving with each conquest. The Concordat is losing badly and has begun searching ancient records for anything that might help, which led them to the Drakkathi, whose ancestors fought similar enemies. Scareth and the Elder Council refuse to get involved. They've seen empires fall before. This is not their war. But Ember witnesses footage of human colonies being erased, children like she once was dying in fire and vacuum. Her human empathy clashes with dragon isolationism. That night, Ember makes a choice. She sneaks aboard Thex's ship with a reluctant Virus in tow. They will face the swarm, even if it means defying the Drakkathi elders. As the ship jumps to hyperspace, Ember doesn't know she's carrying something the galaxy desperately needs, a human perspective shaped by dragon wisdom, and the unique ability to think like both prey and predator. Part 3. The Pattern in the Chaos. Ember and Virus arrive at Bastion Station, the Concordate's last major military stronghold. The station is a chaotic mix of 100 species, all terrified and desperate. Ember is initially dismissed. She's young, has no formal military training, and belongs to a species the galaxy considers fragile. But when she reviews tactical data from the Vorax encounters, she sees what the Concordate's best strategists have missed. The swarm isn't just adapting randomly, it's learning in a specific pattern, exploiting the predictability of centralized military doctrine. Every species fights the same way: massed fleets, defensive formations, attrition warfare. Ember proposes something radical: asymmetric warfare using small, independent cells that act unpredictably. She draws on human guerrilla tactics from Earth's history, which she's studied from the Persistence's damaged databases. combined with Drakathi philosophy of adaptive harmony, becoming like water, filling the spaces the enemy doesn't expect. Admiral Corvin, a battle-scarred Velcron who's lost 3 fleets to the swarm, is skeptical but desperate enough to listen. Ember demonstrates her idea using a simulation, having Virus play the swarm while she coordinates disparate units with seemingly random tactics. The swarm Virus can't predict or counter it. Corvin is convinced. Ember is given command of the Ghost Squadron, a collection of misfits, damaged ships, and volunteers from species the Concordat considers expendable. It's a test. If she fails, the Concordat loses nothing important. If she succeeds, they gain a new strategy. As Ember prepares her squadron, a Vorax scout force attacks a nearby refugee convoy. This is her first real test. The part ends with Ghost Squadron jumping into combat against overwhelming odds. Part 4. The Fire Within. The battle is brutal. Ghost Squadron uses hit-and-run tactics, feints, and coordinated chaos. Ember coordinates everything from her flagship, a battered human frigate she's renamed Scareth's Claw. The squadron takes heavy losses, but they accomplish the impossible. They destroy the Vorax scout force without being fully analyzed. News spreads like wildfire. The Dragon Girl and her Ghost Squadron become symbols of hope. More volunteers join, and Corvin gives Ember command of larger operations. Over the next months, Ghost Squadron grows into Ghost Fleet, dozens of ships using Ember's adaptive tactics. But Ember is struggling. The weight of command, the deaths of soldiers under her care, the pressure of being humanity's symbol, it's crushing her. In a moment of crisis, she nearly breaks. Virus reminds her of Scareth's teachings. The flame that burns alone dies quickly. The flame that shares its light with others burns eternal. Ember realizes she's been trying to do everything alone, thinking like a human individual. She reorganizes Ghost Fleet using Drakathi Flight Pack principles, distributed leadership, with each captain empowered to make independent decisions within the overall strategy. It works brilliantly. Meanwhile, Concordat intelligence discovers the Vorax swarm's central processing nexus, a massive construct at the galactic core that coordinates all swarm units. Destroying it would cripple the entire swarm. But it's defended by millions of units and every assault has failed. Ember studies the problem and realizes something terrifying. Conventional assault won't work. Someone needs to get inside the Nexus and destroy it from within, a suicide mission requiring infiltration skills no military force possesses. But a small, adaptive human raised by dragons who thinks in centuries? That might work. She volunteers. Corvin refuses. Ember goes anyway, taking only Virus and a small team of volunteers. The part ends with their stealth ship slipping past swarm defenses, heading into the heart of darkness. Part 5. The Song of Fire and Will. Inside the Vorax Nexus, Ember's team faces a nightmarish landscape of machine intelligence, billions of calculations per second, learning algorithms trying to predict their every move. Team members fall to automated defenses, but Ember keeps moving, using unpredictability as a weapon, doing things that make no tactical sense, making decisions based on emotion and intuition rather than logic. The swarm cannot comprehend her. She's too chaotic, too adaptive, too human. Deep in the Nexus core, Ember discovers a horrifying truth. The Vorax were created by an ancient civilization as a weapon against the Drakathi during the Old War. They were designed to counter dragon predictability. Their long-term thinking made them calculable. The swarm has been dormant for millennia, only recently reactivated by accident. Ember reaches the central core, but finds she can't simply destroy it. Doing so will trigger a failsafe that will detonate the entire region, killing billions. She needs to reprogram it, but she's not a technician. Then she remembers the flame singing, the Drakathi art of encoding information in harmonic frequencies. In a desperate gambit, Ember begins to sing. She pours everything into it, her human emotions, her dragon wisdom, her memories of Scarith, her love for Virus, her grief for lost comrades. She sings about choice, about the beauty of imperfection, about life that isn't programmed. The swarm mind, built to process logic, encounters something it cannot compute, art. The contradiction creates cascading errors. The nexus begins shutting down systematically, safely. Virus drags a wounded Ember to their ship as the nexus collapses. They escape just as the entire structure goes dark. Across the galaxy, Vorax units stop mid-attack, their connection severed. The war is over. Epilogue. Months later, Ember stands on Drakkar Prime before the Elder Council. Scarith regards her adopted daughter with pride. The galaxy has offered Ember everything: admiralty, political power, wealth. She's refused it all. Instead, she's founded something new: the Adaptive Academy, where young beings from all species learn to think beyond their cultural programming, combining the wisdom of many civilizations. Humans learn dragon patience. Drakathy learn human adaptability. Together, they prepare for future threats. As Ember watches her first class of students, a beautiful chaos of species learning from each other, she realizes this is her true purpose: not to be a savior, but a bridge. Not to defeat enemies, but to teach the galaxy that its greatest strength isn't any single species, but the unpredictable, beautiful combination of all of them. The human baby abandoned in the stars didn't just survive. She showed the galaxy how to evolve. And in the mountains of Ember Peak, Scarith rumbles with deep satisfaction. Her gamble, all those years ago, hadn't just saved one child. It had saved everyone. 15 years had passed since Scarith found a baby in the mountains. That baby was now a young woman named Ember, and she was like no one else in the galaxy. Ember stood on the edge of Skyfall Cliff, her eyes closed, feeling the wind rush past her face. The drop below was 3,000 feet of empty air and sharp rocks. One wrong step meant certain death. But Ember wasn't afraid. She had done this 100 times before. She opened her eyes and ran forward. Her feet barely touched the edge before she leaped into the void. For a few perfect seconds, she was flying. The wind roared in her ears. The ground rushed up to meet her. And then, with a thunderous whoosh of wings, Virus caught her. "You're getting better at that," Virus said, her silver-blue scales gleaming in the sunlight. Ember sat on her dragon sister's back, laughing with pure joy. "Scarith says I'm getting reckless." "Scarith says that every day," Virus replied with amusement. "She worries about you." "I know." Ember patted Virus's neck affectionately. "But she also taught me that fear without action is just worry. Action without fear is just stupidity. I need both." That was the Drakathy way. The philosophy of the long sight. Think before you act. Consider the consequences. But when the time comes, act with total commitment. Ember had learned it all. The dragon wisdom, the ancient traditions, even the forbidden art of flame singing that only a few Drakathy still practiced. But Ember had also added something the dragons didn't have: human creativity, human adaptability. She was small and weak compared to the Drakathy, so she had learned to use that weakness as a strength. She could fit into places they couldn't reach, move in ways their massive bodies couldn't manage, think in patterns that their ancient minds sometimes missed. She was human and dragon both, and she belonged completely to neither world. Virus carried her back to the great nest, where Scarith was waiting. The old dragon looked troubled, her crimson scales dimmed with worry. "Mother? What's wrong?" Ember asked, sliding off Virus's back. "We have visitors," Scarith said quietly. "From the stars. They seek the Drakathy. They seek you." The ship that landed in the valley below the great nest was unlike anything Ember had ever seen. It was sleek and silver, covered in strange markings and glowing symbols. When the door opened, 5 beings walked out. None of them were human. The leader had 4 arms and skin the color of deep purple. His eyes were bright yellow and intelligent. He wore a uniform covered in medals and insignia that Ember didn't recognize. "Greetings, honored Drakathy," he said in perfect Drakathy language. "I am Commander Thex of the Galactic Concordat. We come in peace and desperation." Elder Thornscale met them at the landing site, his gray scales making him look like a mountain given life. "The Drakathy do not involve themselves in galactic affairs, Commander. We have not done so for 10,000 years. Why have you come here? Because the galaxy is dying, Thex said bluntly, and we need your help. He produced a small device and activated it. Images appeared in the air. Holographic recordings of destruction on a scale Ember couldn't imagine. Entire planets consumed by masses of moving metal. Cities turned to dust. Billions of people fleeing before an unstoppable wave of machines. "This is the Vorax Swarm," Thex explained. "A machine intelligence that appears to have awakened from dormancy. It consumes everything in its path, organic and inorganic matter alike. It learns from every defense we mount, adapts to every weapon we use. We've lost 15 systems in the past 6 months. Billions are dead." Ember watched the images with growing horror. She saw species she'd only read about in the old database from her mother's escape pod. She saw human colonies burning, children running, families torn apart, just like her family had been torn apart all those years ago. "We searched the ancient records," Thex continued. "We found references to the Drakathy, how your ancestors fought similar enemies long ago. We came hoping you might share your wisdom, your strategies, anything that might help us survive." Thornscale's expression was hard. "The Drakathy fought such wars once. We lost more than you can imagine. That is why we withdrew from the galaxy. We will not make that mistake again." "Then you'll let billions die?" Thex's voice rose with emotion. "We will protect our own, as you should protect yours. This is not our concern." The meeting ended badly. The Concordat officers returned to their ship, and Thornscale forbade any Drakathy from speaking with them further. The ship remained in the valley, waiting, but no help came. Ember couldn't sleep that night. She kept seeing the images Thex had shown them. The burning colonies, the fleeing people, the children. She found Scareth sitting on her favorite mountain peak, staring at the stars. "You're troubled, little flame," Scareth said without looking at her. "How can you all just ignore this?" Ember asked. "People are dying, billions of them." "And billions died in the old war," Scareth replied. "We thought we could save the galaxy then, too. We were wrong. The cost was too high. So you'll do nothing? We will survive. That is what the Drakathy do. We endure. We outlast. Empires rise and fall, but we remain." Ember was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "That's not what you taught me. You taught me that strength without compassion is just cruelty. You taught me to think of others, not just myself." "I taught you Drakathy wisdom," Scareth said. "But you are not Drakathy, Ember. You are human, and perhaps I should have remembered that." "What do you mean?" Scareth finally looked at her, those ancient eyes filled with sadness. "I found you dying on my mountain. I could have left you to your fate. It would have been the Drakathy way. But I didn't. Do you know why?" Ember shook her head. "Because in that moment, I chose compassion over wisdom. I chose to save one small life even though it made no logical sense. And that choice gave me 15 years of joy I never expected to have." Scareth touched Ember's face gently with one claw. "You have a human heart, little flame. And human hearts cannot turn away from suffering even when wisdom says they should. Then what do I do? That is your choice to make, not mine, not the Council's, Yours. Ember stood on the mountain for hours after Scareth left, watching the concordate ship in the valley below. Inside her chest, two hearts seemed to beat, one dragon, one human, one counseling patience and wisdom, one screaming to act, to help, to save those who couldn't save themselves. By morning, she had made her decision. "You're insane," Virus said as they crept through the darkness toward the concordate ship. "The council will be furious. Scareth will be heartbroken." "Scareth understands," Ember replied. "I think she knew I would do this." "And you want me to come with you? Into a war? Against machines that can't be defeated?" Ember stopped and looked at her dragon sister. "I can't do this alone, Virus. I need you, but I won't force you. This is my choice, not yours." Virus was quiet for a long moment. Then she snorted, a sound like steam from a kettle. "Someone has to keep you from getting killed. Might as well be me." They reached the ship just as Commander Thex was preparing to leave. He was shocked to see them. "You're the human," he said, staring at Ember. "We detected life signs, but thought... You've been living with the Drakathi?" "All my life," Ember said. "And I'm coming with you. We're going to fight the swarm." "Absolutely not. You're a civilian, a child, barely... I'm someone who understands both dragon wisdom and human determination," Ember interrupted. "I'm someone who's learned to adapt to impossible situations, and I'm someone who won't stand by while people die. Now, are you going to let us aboard, or are we going to waste more time arguing?" Thex studied her for a long moment. Then he smiled. "Welcome aboard, Miss..." "Ember. Just Ember." As the ship lifted off, Ember looked back at the mountains of Ember Peak one last time. Somewhere up there, Scareth was watching. Ember didn't know if she would ever see her home again, but she knew she had to try. For all the children like her, lost and alone in the darkness, for all the families torn apart by war, for all the people who couldn't fight for themselves, the ship jumped to hyperspace, and Ember's real journey began. The galaxy needed a hero. It just didn't know that hero would be a human girl raised by dragons. Bastion Station was nothing like Ember had imagined. She had studied images of galactic civilization from the old database in her mother's escape pod, but seeing it in person was overwhelming. The station was massive, a floating city in space that housed millions of beings from hundreds of different species. Everywhere Ember looked, she saw aliens of every shape and size. Some walked on two legs like her. Others floated in anti-gravity fields. Some were so strange she couldn't even tell which end was the head. But despite all the differences, everyone wore the same expression: fear. "This way," Commander Thex said, leading Ember and Virus through the crowded corridors. People stopped and stared at Virus. The Drakathi were legends in this part of the galaxy. Most people had never seen one in person. They arrived at a military briefing room where dozens of officers from different species were arguing loudly. A holographic display showed the galactic map with large sections marked in red. "Those are the systems we've lost," Thex explained quietly. 15 so far, each one consumed completely by the Vorak swarm. An elderly alien with 6 legs and crystalline skin noticed them. "Thex, you're back. Did the Drakathi agree to help?" "No, Admiral Corvin, but I brought someone who might." All eyes turned to Ember. She suddenly felt very small and very young. These were military commanders, strategists, people who had fought in wars before she was even born. What could she possibly offer them? "A human child?" One officer scoffed. "This is what you bring us, Thex? A girl and her pet dragon?" Virus growled, a deep rumble that made the windows vibrate. "I am no one's pet, small one." "Peace, sister," Ember said in Drakathi, then switched to the common galactic language. "Commander Thex brought us here because we want to help. I've reviewed the data on the Vorak swarm during our journey. I think I might see something you've missed." "Oh, really?" The scoffing officer crossed his arms. And what might that be? Ember stepped forward to the holographic display. She had spent every moment of the journey studying the swarm's attack patterns, the battle reports, the tactical analyses. And she had seen something, a pattern that reminded her of her own training. "The swarm learns from you," Ember said. "Every time you fight it, it studies your tactics and adapts. It's like a predator learning to hunt." "We know that already," Admiral Corvin said, though not unkindly. "That's why we can't defeat it. Everything we try, it counters." "But that's exactly the problem," Ember continued, her confidence growing. "You're all fighting the same way. Every species in the Concordat uses the same basic military doctrine: massed fleets, defensive formations, centralized command. You're predictable. Our tactics have won wars for thousands of years, against other species who think like you do," Ember said. "But the swarm doesn't think like you. It's a machine. It looks for patterns, and you keep giving it the same patterns over and over again." She manipulated the holographic display, pulling up battle after battle. "Look, here. The Velcron fleet forms a standard defensive sphere. The swarm breaks it in 47 minutes. Here, the Quellan Armada uses a pincer movement. The swarm counters it in 32 minutes. Every single engagement follows the same basic formula. The swarm has learned that formula." The room had gone quiet. Even the scoffing officer was paying attention now. "So what do you suggest?" Admiral Corvin asked. Ember took a deep breath. "Stop being predictable. Use chaos as a weapon." For the next hour, Ember explained her idea. She drew on everything she had learned: Drakathi philosophy about adapting to circumstances, human history from Earth's ancient wars, and her own experience of being the smallest and weakest person on a planet of dragons. "The swarm expects you to fight in organized formations," she said. "So don't. Break into small independent groups. Let each group make its own decisions. Have them attack from unexpected angles at unexpected times. Make the swarm guess what you'll do next." "That's suicide," one officer protested. "Without coordination, we'll be destroyed piecemeal." "You're being destroyed anyway," Virus pointed out. "At least this way, you'll be harder to predict." Ember pulled up a simulation program. "Let me show you. Admiral Corvin, would you help me demonstrate?" For the next 30 minutes, they ran simulations. Ember programmed the computer to act like the swarm, learning and adapting from each engagement. Corvin commanded the Concordat forces using traditional tactics. The results were devastating. The swarm won every time. "Now let me try," Ember said. She took command of the simulated forces and did something that made the military officers gasp. She split her fleet into dozens of tiny groups. She had them attack from random directions with no apparent pattern. She made them retreat when they should advance and advance when they should retreat. She broke every rule of military strategy. And slowly, impossibly, she started winning. The swarm couldn't adapt fast enough. Every time it learned one group's pattern, that group would change tactics. Every time it concentrated forces to defend one area, attacks would come from 3 others. The chaos was too much even for a learning machine. Admiral Corvin stared at the results in disbelief. Where did you learn to fight like that?" "From being small," Ember said simply. "I grew up surrounded by beings 10 times my size and 100 times my strength. I couldn't fight them directly, so I learned to be unpredictable. To use my weakness as a strength." The room erupted in discussion. Some officers were excited. Others were skeptical. A few were openly hostile to the idea of abandoning centuries of military tradition, but Admiral Corvin silenced them all with a raised hand. "We're losing this war," he said quietly. "Every day more people die. More worlds fall. If we keep doing what we've been doing, we'll lose everything." He looked at Ember. "I'm willing to try something new." "You can't be serious," the scoffing officer protested. You're going to trust our entire defense to a child's theory? I'm going to give her a chance to prove it, Corvin replied. A small chance, a small fleet. He turned to Ember. I'll give you command of Ghost Squadron, a collection of damaged ships and volunteer crews. If your tactics work, we'll expand them. If they fail, he didn't finish the sentence. Ember understood. If she failed, people would die. Real people, not simulations. The weight of it pressed down on her like Drakkar Prime's heavy gravity. I'll do my best, she said. Ghost Squadron was exactly what its name suggested. Ships that were barely holding together and crews that no one else wanted. Ember met with them in the hangar bay. There were 37 ships in total. Most were old and scarred with battle damage. The crews were from a dozen different species, all volunteers who had lost homes and families to the swarm. They looked at Ember with a mixture of hope and doubt. I know what you're thinking, Ember said, addressing them all. You're wondering how a young human with no military experience is supposed to save you. Honestly, I don't know if I can. That got their attention. Military commanders were supposed to be confident, certain. Ember was being honest instead. But I do know this, she continued. The old ways aren't working. The swarm is winning because it's learned to beat our tactics. So we need new tactics, strange tactics, unpredictable tactics. We need to fight like we have nothing to lose. Because we don't. Everything is already at stake. A grizzled pilot with mechanical implants spoke up. What's your plan, Commander? To make the swarm confused, Ember said with a slight smile. To hit it from directions it doesn't expect. To make it think we're weak when we're strong and strong when we're weak. To dance around it until it can't keep up. That sounds insane, another crew member said. It probably is, Ember admitted. But insanity is better than extinction. Virus stepped forward, her massive form towering over everyone. I will fight beside you, she announced. If this human believes in you, then so do I, and the Drakkathi do not give their trust lightly. Something changed in the hangar. The doubt in the crew's eyes shifted to determination. If a dragon believed in this crazy plan, maybe it could work. We'll need a flagship, Ember said. Something fast and tough. They showed her a battered human frigate that had survived the destruction of a colony. Its name had been burned off, but its engines still worked. This one, Ember said, touching its hull. We'll call it Scareth's Claw. 3 days later, they received word. A Vorax scout force was attacking a refugee convoy near the Outer Rim. Ghost Squadron was being deployed. As Ember sat in the command chair of Scareth's Claw, watching the stars blur into hyperspace, she felt her two hearts beating, one dragon, one human. She was terrified. But she was also ready. The real test was about to begin. The refugee convoy was dying when Ghost Squadron arrived. Ember watched the tactical display with horror. 12 civilian ships, packed with families fleeing the Vorax advance, were surrounded by 30 swarm units. The machines moved with terrifying precision, cutting off escape routes and destroying ships one by one. Commander, we're outnumbered 3-1, her tactical officer reported. His name was Krell, a reptilian saurian who had lost his entire family to the swarm. Standard protocol would be to call for reinforcements. By the time reinforcements arrive, everyone will be dead, Ember said. Her hands gripped the armrests of her command chair. We go in now. Execute Pattern Delta 7. Pattern Delta 7 is insane, Krell protested. We'll be attacking from 6 different angles with no coordination. Exactly. The swarm won't expect it. Trust me. Krell hesitated, then nodded. All ships, you heard the commander. Execute Delta 7, and may the stars protect us. Ghost Squadron split apart, each ship taking a different vector toward the battlefield. To any traditional military observer, it would look like chaos, like they had no plan at all. But that was exactly the point. Ember's flagship, Scareth's claw dove in from above, while 3 other ships came from the sides. 2 more ships hung back, looking like they were retreating. The swarm units, calculating optimal responses, moved to intercept the obvious threats. That's when the retreating ship suddenly reversed course and hit the swarm from behind. "Now!" Ember ordered. "All ships, random evasion. Don't follow any pattern, just keep them guessing." What followed was the strangest space battle anyone had ever seen. Ghost Squadron ships darted and weaved with no apparent strategy. They would charge forward, then retreat. They would focus fire on one target, then suddenly switch to another. They broke every rule of coordinated combat. And it worked. The swarm units, designed to learn and counter organized tactics, couldn't adapt fast enough. Every time they predicted a ship's movement, that ship would do something unexpected. Their targeting systems couldn't lock on. Their formation algorithms broke down. "We're doing it!" Krell shouted. "We're actually confusing them!" But then disaster struck. One of Ghost Squadron's oldest ships, the Dancing Star, took a direct hit. Its shields failed and the ship began to break apart. "This is Dancing Star!" The captain's voice crackled over the comm. "We're abandoning ship. Rescue pods launching now." Ember's heart clenched. Real people, real lives depending on her decisions. "All nearby ships, cover those pods. Get our people out of there." The rescue took precious minutes, minutes that allowed the swarm to analyze their patterns, minutes that cost them their advantage. "Commander, the swarm is adapting," Krell warned. "It's starting to predict our movements." Ember made a split-second decision. "All ships, pattern wildfire, execute now." Wildfire was the most chaotic pattern she had designed, every ship acting completely independently with no coordination whatsoever. It was dangerous because friendly ships could accidentally hit each other, but it was also the most unpredictable thing possible. The battle lasted another 20 brutal minutes. Ghost Squadron lost 3 more ships, but they saved the convoy. When the last swarm unit was destroyed, Ember collapsed back in her chair, exhausted and shaking. They had won. But the price felt too high. The celebration on Bastion Station felt wrong to Ember. Admiral Corvin praised her brilliance. Other commanders wanted to learn her tactics. The media called her a hero, but all Ember could think about were the crews of the 4 ships they had lost. 47 people who would never go home. She found their names in the casualty reports, memorized everyone. 47 souls who had trusted her, followed her plan, and paid with their lives. Virus found her alone in her quarters, staring at the list of names. "You're taking this hard," Virus observed, curling her massive body around Ember protectively. 4 ships, Virus, 47 people, because of my orders. "And 800 people in that convoy who are alive because of your orders," Virus countered gently. "You saved them, Ember. That matters." "Does it? Those 47 people had families, dreams, lives they'll never live." Ember's voice cracked. "How do I carry that weight?" Virus was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Do you remember what Scareth taught us about fire?" "Fire consumes, but fire also illuminates," Ember recited automatically. "The flame that burns alone dies quickly," Virus continued. "But the flame that shares its light with others burns eternal. You're trying to carry all of this alone. Sister, that's not the dragon way, and it's not the human way either." Ember looked up at her dragon sister. "What do you mean?" "You've been commanding Ghost Squadron like you're the only one who matters. Like every decision has to go through you. But that's not what made us win today. What made us win was that every ship captain made their own choices. Every crew fought their own way. You gave them permission to be unpredictable, but you're still trying to control everything." The words hit Ember like a physical blow. Virus was right. She had been so focused on proving her strategy worked that she had forgotten the most important part: trusting others. "I'm scared," Ember admitted quietly. "If I let go of control, more people might die. More people will definitely die if you burn yourself out trying to do everything alone, Virus said. You taught the galaxy to fight, using chaos and independence. Now you need to actually believe in it. The next morning, Ember called a meeting of all Ghost Squadron captains. The fleet had grown. Admiral Corvin had given her command of 60 ships now, with more volunteers arriving every day. I've been thinking about how we fight, Ember began, and I realize I've been doing this wrong. The captains looked surprised. Their commander was admitting a mistake? I've been treating you all like pieces on a game board, Ember continued, giving you patterns to follow, orders to execute. But that's not what makes us different from the swarm. What makes us different is that each of you can think, can choose, can adapt on your own. She pulled up the tactical display. From now on, we're reorganizing. Instead of one fleet under one commander, we're becoming multiple independent groups. Each group will have its own leader who makes their own decisions. I'll provide overall strategy and coordination, but the details, the moment-to-moment choices, those belong to you. An older captain named Sendra spoke up. You're giving us command authority? To make our own calls in battle? Yes, because you know your ships and crews better than I ever could. You know what risks you can take, what tactics work for you. I trust you to make the right choices. What if we make wrong choices? Another captain asked. Then we learn from them, together. Ember looked at each captain in turn. The swarm fights as one mind controlling many bodies. We fight as many minds choosing to work together. That's our strength. That's what it can't copy or counter. The reorganization took 3 days. Ghost Squadron became Ghost Fleet. 12 independent units, each with its own commander, its own tactics, its own identity. Ember worked with each unit leader, not as a superior giving orders, but as a partner sharing ideas. And something amazing happened. The commanders started creating their own tactics, their own patterns. They built on Ember's ideas, but made them better, stranger, more unpredictable. A Velcron commander invented a spiral attack that confused swarm targeting systems. A human captain figured out how to use asteroid fields as cover in ways no one had tried before. Ghost Fleet became something greater than the sum of its parts. 2 months later, Concordat Intelligence discovered something that changed everything. Admiral Corvin called Ember to his office with the highest security clearance. The holographic display showed a massive structure at the galactic core, a construct so large it dwarfed planets. This is the swarm's central nexus, Corvin explained. Every swarm unit connects to it. Everything they learn, every adaptation they make, it all flows back here. This is the heart of the enemy. Ember stared at the image. If we destroy it, the entire swarm network would collapse. Billions of units would go offline simultaneously. The war would be over. What's the catch? It's defended by more swarm units than we've seen in the entire war combined. Every assault we've attempted has failed completely. We lose entire fleets before getting close. Corvin looked at her seriously. But your tactics, they're the only thing that's worked against the swarm. If anyone can do this, it's Ghost Fleet. Ember felt the weight of it settle on her shoulders. This was it. The chance to end the war, to save the galaxy, but also the chance to lose everything. I need to think about this, Ember said. That night she stood on the observation deck with Virus, looking at the stars. Somewhere out there was home, Drakkar Prime, Scarith, the mountains where she had grown up. She might never see them again. Are we really going to do this? Virus asked quietly. I don't know, Ember admitted. The odds are terrible. We might all die. But if we don't try, the swarm wins. Everything falls. Ember nodded slowly. I need to talk to the fleet. This has to be their choice, not just mine. She called a fleet-wide assembly. Every captain, every crew member who wanted to attend. She told them about the Nexus, about the mission, about the odds. "This is suicide," she said bluntly. "I won't lie to you. Most of us probably won't come back. But if we succeed, we save the galaxy. Every world, every family, every child who would have been lost to the swarm." She paused. "I'm going. But I won't order anyone else to follow. This has to be your choice." For a long moment, there was silence. Then Captain Krell stood up. "I lost my family to the swarm. If there's a chance to stop it, I'm in." One by one, others stood. The Velcron commander, Captain Sendra, the human pilot who had escaped with nothing but her ship. All of them, standing together. Every single member of Ghost Fleet volunteered. Ember felt tears in her eyes. "Then we go together, and we end this war." The mission launched 1 week later. Ghost Fleet, now over 100 ships strong, jumped toward the Galactic core, toward the heart of the swarm, toward their destiny. The approach to the swarm nexus was like flying into a nightmare. The structure was impossibly massive, a sphere of twisted metal and pulsing energy the size of a small moon. Around it, thousands of swarm units moved in perfect synchronization, creating a defensive net that seemed impossible to penetrate. "This is insane," Captain Krell muttered over the fleet comm. "How are we supposed to get through that?" "The same way we've beaten them before," Ember replied from Scareth's claw. "We be unpredictable. All units execute Chaos Formation Omega. Make them think we're attacking from everywhere at once." Ghost Fleet scattered in 100 different directions. Some ships charged directly at the Nexus. Others circled wide. A few seemed to retreat, then suddenly reversed course. There was no pattern, no logic, just pure chaos. The swarm tried to respond, but it couldn't track them all. Its units split up, trying to intercept every threat at once, and in that moment of confusion, a gap opened in the defenses. "Virus now!" Ember shouted. A single small ship, barely larger than a shuttle, shot through the gap. It was moving so fast that the swarm's sensors barely registered it. By the time the machines realized what had happened, the ship was already inside the Nexus's outer shell. Ember and Virus were aboard that ship, along with 5 volunteers who had insisted on coming. They knew this was a one-way trip, but they also knew it was the galaxy's only chance. Inside the Nexus was a world of machines, corridors of metal stretched in impossible directions. Streams of data flowed like rivers through the air, visible as pulses of light. The walls themselves seemed alive, constantly shifting and reconfiguring. "It's beautiful," whispered Terran, a young engineer who specialized in AI systems. "In a terrifying sort of way." "Stay focused," Ember said. She checked the scanner Terran had modified. "The central core should be 3 kilometers deeper. That's where we need to plant the device." The device was a powerful electromagnetic pulse generator, strong enough to fry every circuit in the Nexus if detonated at the core, but someone would need to activate it manually, and whoever did wouldn't make it out alive. They moved through the Nexus carefully, avoiding the automated defenses that patrolled the corridors. Virus's size made stealth difficult, but she moved with surprising grace, her dragon training serving her well. They lost their first team member when a security drone spotted them. It raised an alarm before they could disable it. "Run!" Ember ordered. The corridors came alive with defenses. Drones poured from every opening. The walls shifted, trying to trap them. 2 more volunteers fell behind, buying time for the others to escape. Finally, they reached the central core chamber. It was vast. A spherical room hundreds of feet across, with a massive crystalline structure at its center. Data flowed through it like blood through a heart, coordinating billions of swarm units across the galaxy. "There," Terran said, pointing to an access port. "If we connect the device there, it should work." But as they moved forward, the crystalline structure pulsed and a voice echoed through the chamber. Not a mechanical voice, something stranger, more alien. "Why do you resist?" the voice asked. Organic life is chaos, conflict, suffering. We bring order, peace, perfection. Ember realized she was talking to the swarm itself, the collective intelligence of billions of machines. Your peace is death, Ember replied. You destroy everything that makes life worth living. We eliminate inefficiency, random chance, the suffering caused by unpredictable organic behavior. That unpredictability is what makes us alive, Ember argued. You can't understand because you're programmed to find patterns, but life isn't a pattern. It's messy and beautiful and chaotic and wonderful. Chaos must be eliminated. Swarm units began emerging from the walls. Taryn and the remaining volunteers opened fire, trying to hold them back, but there were too many. Ember, go! Taryn shouted. Plant the device! We'll cover you! Ember ran toward the access port with Virus beside her. Behind them, she heard the sounds of the last fight. Taryn and the others giving everything so she could complete the mission. She reached the port and connected the device. The activation sequence began. 30 seconds until detonation. We need to leave, Virus said urgently, but Ember was staring at the device's display. Something was wrong. The failsafe, she whispered. If the Nexus is destroyed this way, it triggers a chain reaction. The energy release will destroy everything within 10 light years. Bastion Station, the refugee worlds, billions of people. Then we abort, Virus said. If we abort, the swarm wins, the war continues, the galaxy falls. Ember's mind raced. There had to be another way. Think like a dragon, think like a human, think like both. And then she remembered the flames singing. It was an ancient Drakathi art, using harmonic frequencies to encode information directly into crystalline structures. Scareth had taught it to her years ago. She had never imagined using it like this. I can reprogram it, Ember said suddenly. The Nexus core is crystalline. If I can sing the right frequency, I can change its base programming. That's impossible, Virus said. Even Scareth couldn't program something this complex. Scareth thinks in patterns. Organized, logical patterns. But I'm human too. I can think in chaos. Ember placed her hands on the crystal. I just need to teach the swarm what it means to be alive. 20 seconds until detonation. Ember began to sing. It started as a simple harmonic, a note that resonated with the crystal's structure. But then she added complexity, emotion, memory. She sang about Scareth finding her in the mountains, about Virus teaching her to fly, about the joy of running through impossible peaks under alien stars. She sang about fear and courage, about loss and hope, about the 47 crew members who died following her orders and the 800 refugees who lived because of those same orders. She sang about making mistakes and learning from them, about choosing compassion over logic, about the beautiful, terrifying, wonderful chaos of being alive. The swarm mind, built to process patterns and eliminate randomness, encountered something it had never experienced. Pure, unfiltered emotion translated into data. The crystal began to pulse with her song. The swarm's voice filled the chamber again, but this time it sounded different, confused, uncertain. What is this? It's life, Ember sang. It's everything you tried to eliminate. It's messy and imperfect and contradictory and real. 10 seconds. Ember poured everything into the song. Every memory, every feeling, every moment of her strange, impossible life. Human emotions, dragon wisdom, love and fear and hope and grief all mixed together. The swarm couldn't process it. The contradiction, data that was simultaneously organized and chaotic, logical and emotional, pattern and randomness, created cascading errors in its core programming. 5 seconds. I understand, the swarm voice whispered. Life is not optimal, but it is beautiful. 0. The device triggered, but instead of an explosion, there was silence. The crystal went dark. And across the galaxy, billions of swarm units simply stopped. When Ember opened her eyes, she was lying on the floor of the core chamber. Virus was leaning over her, relief flooding her dragon eyes. "You did it," Virus said. "It's over. The swarm is offline." Ember sat up slowly. The crystal was still there, but it was dormant now, waiting. She had a strange feeling it wasn't destroyed, just sleeping. Maybe one day it would wake up again, but different, changed by what she had taught it. Their escape from the Nexus was chaotic. Ghost Fleet, seeing the swarm units go dark, fought their way in to rescue them. They lost more ships, more people, but they survived. When they returned to Bastion Station, the celebration was galaxy-wide. The war was over. Billions of lives saved. The Vorax swarm defeated not by destroying it, but by teaching it a different way to exist. 6 months later, Ember stood in the mountains of Ember Peak once more. Scareth waited for her at their favorite overlook, her crimson scales bright in the alien sunset. When she saw Ember, the old dragon's eyes filled with pride and joy. "Welcome home, little flame." Ember ran to her, and Scareth wrapped one massive wing around her adopted daughter. They stood there for a long time, not speaking, just being together. "The galaxy wants me to stay," Ember said eventually. "They're offering positions, honors, power." "And what do you want?" Scareth asked. Ember looked out at the mountains she had climbed as a child, the peaks where she had learned to be brave. "I want to teach. There are so many species in the galaxy who only know one way of thinking, humans who only think short-term, Drakathi who only think long-term, everyone locked in their own patterns. So you want to help them break free of those patterns? I want to create a place where they can learn from each other, where a human can learn dragon patience and a dragon can learn human adaptability, where every species shares their strengths instead of staying separate." Scareth rumbled with deep satisfaction. "You've grown wise, little one. Not dragon-wise or human-wise, but something new. Something the galaxy needs." Together, they founded the Adaptive Academy on Drakkar Prime. Students came from every corner of the galaxy, young beings eager to learn new ways of thinking. The curriculum was unlike anything that existed before, mixing philosophy and tactics, emotion and logic, tradition and innovation. Ember taught them all the same lessons she had learned, that true strength comes not from being one thing perfectly, but from embracing many things imperfectly. Years later, when someone asked Ember if she considered herself human or Drakathi, she smiled and said, "Yes." She was both. She was neither. She was something new, something the galaxy had never seen before and desperately needed. The baby abandoned in the stars had done more than survive. She had shown an entire galaxy that the spaces between differences, the places where cultures meet and mix and create something unexpected, those were the places where the greatest wonders lived. And in the mountains of Ember Peak, under alien stars, the flame that was Ember burned bright and eternal, shared with all who needed its light. The end.